Mirata here na don lífer corfuin kun sinna stúr in a ganifra, agus narta grastra brona or in ganida hort con criha. Annas gurut sa sofer in illa briher, agus in illa ganif fasta, agus gur tre to creek no free to Christ or dear. Directly beseech dear Lord our actions by the holy inspirations and carry them on by thy gracious assistance, that every word and work of ours may always begin from thee and by thee be happily ended. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay.
I now call on the Clerk Assistant to the Dáil to announce the returns to by-election writs for the constituencies of Dublin South West and Roscommon South Leitrim.
Gólína bhunordú céad seachta cuaig den a búnordtha a Dave Gno Fubli tá or a chréile go nearna sa chórthaáchan a bhí an 10 lá de dhearra fór 2014 de cheann an teachta Lucas Ming ó Flanagan a haghaidh chun Parliament na Eorpa an comhalta seo a leanas a haghaidh an Dáil. In compliance with Standing Order 175 of the Standing Orders relative to public business, I have to announce that at the by-election held on the 10th of October 2014, consequent on the election of Deputy Luke Ming Flanagan to the European Parliament, the following member has been elected to the Dáil. Dáil Ceantar Roscommon Leitrim Has, Micheál Macgilla Burish, constituency of Roscommon South Leitrim, Michael Fitzmaurice. Tá rulla na gcomhaltaí sínithe ag an teachta de réir bhunordú a hain. The Deputy has signed the roll of members in accordance with Standing Order 1.
Sold a T-shirt for the end. Sold it you were here.
A gólína bhunordú céad seachta cuaig den a búnordtha a Dave Gno Fubli tá or a chréile go nearna sa chórthaáchan a bhí an 10 lá de dhearra fór 2014 de cheann an teachta Brian O'Hay a haghaidh chun Parliament na Eorpa an comhalta seo a leanas a haghaidh an Dáil. In compliance with Standing Order 175 of the Standing Orders relative to public business, I have to announce that at the by-election held on the 10th of October 2014, consequent on the election of Deputy Brian Hayes to the European Parliament, the following member has been elected to the Dáil. Dáil Ceantar Bhaile Clia Hir Has, Poland Wuraku, constituency of Dublin South West, Paul Murphy. Tá rulla na gcomhaltaí sínithe ag an teachta de réir bhunordú a hain. The Deputy has signed the roll of members in accordance with Standing Order 1.
suit, John. Love the suit. Joe, the real scalp. High suits, Joe.
Because of time constraints, unfortunately, we don't have much of an opportunity at this point to welcome both deputies from the different sides of the House. However, there'll be other opportunities at a later date. But I know I speak in everybody's behalf when we recognise that this is a very special day for both deputies to be elected to this House. And I wish them both every success and happiness while they're here. And I hope they make a major contribution to the workings of the House and its committees. As we now are approaching 2:30, I think it would be in order to call on the Minister for Finance to make his budget statement.
I can call on. When the government took office in March of 2011, we set out a plan to regain control of Ireland's fiscal and economic policies, to grow the economy and to get people back to work. Many people, both inside and outside the House, believed that we as a government would fail, and they opposed each and every step we took along the way. But I can call the government did not fail. We exited the bailout. The public finances are under control. The Irish economy is growing at the fastest rate among developed economies. The rate of jobs creation in Ireland is one of the fastest in Europe. We are ahead of our planned fiscal targets, and we have managed to achieve this progress with less tax increases and fewer expenditure cuts than envisaged in 2011. We have succeeded in key negotiations over our EU and IMF loans and on the promissory notes. The road we have travelled to get to this point has been very difficult, and the Irish people have made major sacrifices. But the policies pursued by this government have worked, and the recovery in the Irish economy is well underway. The recovery has not spread across the country yet, and many families have yet to experience it. The government is fully aware of this fact. For many people, the recovery will only come when they get a job. For some, the recovery will come when they see more money in their pockets. For many families, the permanent return of a loved one who has emigrated will mark the end of the crisis and start the recovery. Budget 215 is about securing the recovery, building for the future, and broadening it to families across the country. This government will not be returning to the boom and bust model of the past that has spectacularly and repeatedly failed the Irish people. We must secure a new economy for a new Ireland. Of course, we must continue to deal with the legacy issues of the economic crisis, and we will do so. But today is about looking forward, is about building for the future upon this solid foundation that has been so painstakingly laid. As a result of the policies pursued by this government and the sacrifices of the Irish people, the macroeconomic and fiscal framework underpinning this year's budget is far more favourable than in previous years. The recovery is gaining momentum. While exports are continuing to grow, the recovery is broadening, with domestic sources of growth, consumer spending and investment contributing positively for the first time since 2007. We have now had 7 consecutive quarters of solid annual employment expansion, and we have now seen an increase in employment of over 70,000 people at work since the low point in early 2012. Unemployment, while still too high at 11.1%, is at its lowest level in 5.5 years and has now fallen for 27 months in a row. My department is forecasting a continuation of this trend and expects unemployment to fall to an average of just above 10% next year. It is clear that the measures introduced to support job creation in key sectors of the economy are working. My department estimates there will be around 1,920,000 people at work by the end of this year. This is over 80,000 higher than at the low point 2.5 years ago. By the end of 2015, it is anticipated that the increase from the low point will be around 128,000, and we expect to have 2 million people at work in 2016. The evidence of the growing economy can be seen in the public finances. Throughout the course of 2014, taxes have grown steadily, and my department is projecting an outturn of over 41 billion, 1 billion ahead of profile. Thanks to this strong revenue growth, effective expenditure management, and the impact of European statistical changes, the forecast deficit for 2014 is 3.7% of GDP. This is well inside our excessive deficit procedure target of 5.1% and the 4.8% target on which we built the budget in 2014. My department is forecasting GDP growth of 4.7% this year. On a no policy change basis, the department is forecasting real GDP growth in 2015 of 3.6%. These forecasts are prudent and were endorsed by the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council. However, as a result of the package of measures I am introducing today, the GDP growth forecast in 2015 has been revised up to 3.9%. In 2016, the growth rate will be 3.4%. In 2017, the growth rate will be 3.4%. And in 2018, the growth rate will be again 3.4%. This is the type of solid and steady economic growth that we want in coming years. The government's strategy to reduce the burden of our debt by improving the terms of our EU IMF loans and the promissory note, minimising future borrowing requirements by reducing the deficit and by growing the economy is working. The forecast debt to GDP ratio for in 2014 is under 111%. When account is taken of cash balances and other financial assets, the 2014 net debt forecast is just below 91%. Furthermore, a debt-reducing primary surplus of 0.3% of GDP will be achieved this year. However, our debt is still high by comparison to many of our fellow EU members, so we need to continue this approach. Not only will this make the debt more sustainable, it will also minimise the cost to the taxpayer of interest paid on the national debt. This is the backdrop to today's budget. Prudent and responsible budgeting has got us to this point. Prudent and responsible budgeting will be how we will continue. Each year, this government has set ambitious deficit reduction targets, often inside those required under the Stability and Growth Pact, and each year we have beaten these targets. This approach has been a key factor in restoring market access and in successfully exiting the EU IMF programme last year. Investor confidence in Ireland has returned, and our 10-year sovereign bond yields are down to record lows, trading at 1.72 this morning. The three major agencies, Moody's, S&P and Fitch, all upgraded their rating of our long-term debt during 2014, with two of them moving us into the A grades. That is why I'm targeting a deficit of 2.7% in Budget 2015, ahead of the required target of 2.9% of GDP. I think that it is appropriate to go beyond our requirements under the Stability and Growth Pact in order to build upon the progress made to date. Achieving a deficit below 3% does not signal an end to fiscal prudence in Ireland. Exceeding our target in 2015 will underpin solid, steady economic growth into the medium term and is a further step on the way to balancing the budget. Even so, these figures do not fully reflect the progress that we are making, as an element of the surplus income due from the central bank in 2015 is being used to reduce the debt. If the entire surplus income was counted for deficit reduction, the forecast deficit will be 2.5% this next year. This prudent approach further improves our debt sustainability. We are making significant progress, and we are forecasting that our gross debt ratio will drop below 100% of GDP in 2018, ahead of the reduction required by the Stability and Growth Pact. Total general government revenue will be 65.2 billion in 2015, and total general expenditure will be 70.5 billion. Expenditure under the government expenditure ceiling, consisting of gross voted expenditure, along with expenditure funded by the Social Insurance Fund and the National Training Fund, will be 53.6 billion. Minister Howland will set out full details of his 2015 expenditure allocations and publish the ministerial expenditure ceilings. Since coming to office, the government has provided vital supports to indigenous industry to grow and create jobs, such as the Jobs Initiative for the tourism sector, the tax reform plan for SMEs, and measures such as the home renovation incentive for the construction sector. We have introduced significant reforms and improvements to our corporate tax system, and last year I introduced changes to address stateless companies. Today I am publishing a roadmap to secure Ireland's place as the destination for the best and most successful companies in the world. There are many changes taking place globally in corporate tax. The key role the corporate tax regime plays in attracting investment is recognised by all developed economies, and our competitors for foreign direct investment are introducing enhancements to their systems to attract investment. For over 60 years, foreign direct investment has been a cornerstone of Ireland's economic development. We've competed for and won major investments into Ireland and Europe for some of the largest and most successful companies in the world. With over 166,000 people employed in over 1,100 companies, the Irish foreign direct investment sector has real substance. Our competitive corporate tax regime plays a key role. Ireland's corporate tax strategy has three key elements: the rate, the regime and our reputation, and I will deal with each issue in turn. The 12.5% tax rate remains at the heart of this. The government has successfully protected the 12.5% tax rate in recent years. The 12.5% tax rate never has been and never will be up for discussion. The 12.5% tax rate is settled policy. It will not change. The roadmap responds to a changing international environment and ensures that we continue to attract and retain companies of real substance, offering real jobs. The roadmap will improve Ireland's R&D regime by fully phasing out the R&D base year from the 1st of January 2015, enhance Ireland's existing intangible asset tax provisions to make Ireland an even more attractive location for companies to develop intellectual property, improve SARP, the Special Assignee Relief Programme, and increase the resources of the Revenue Commissioners in its role as a competent authority. I am also going to extend the 3-year corporation tax relief for start-up companies and the accelerated capital allowance scheme for energy-efficient equipment for a further 3 years. Companies now invest as much or more in knowledge-based capital as they do in physical capital, such as plant and machinery. Subsequently, I intend putting in place a knowledge development box along the lines of patent and innovation boxes which have existed for many years in countries that compete with us for foreign direct investment. I am launching a public consultation process to gather views on how the knowledge development box should operate, and I plan to legislate for it in next year's finance bill, or as soon as the EU and the OECD discussions conclude. My intention is that the knowledge development box will be best in class and at a low, competitive and sustainable tax rate. This intellectual property offering will be a key element in attracting future foreign direct investment to Ireland. Aggressive tax planning by the multinational companies has been criticised by governments across the globe and has damaged the reputation of many countries. Schemes that exploit mismatches in tax legislation are being heavily scrutinised by the OECD and others, and through the base erosion and profit shifting project that will come to an end over time. The so-called double Irish is one of many such schemes. I am abolishing the ability of companies to use the double Irish by changing our residency rules to require all companies registered in Ireland to also be tax resident in Ireland. This legal change will take effect from the 1st of January 2015 for new companies. For existing companies, there will be provision for a transition period until the end of 2020. This proactive change will bring an end to international tax planning. This proactive change will not bring an end to international tax planning. This requires coordinated action by all countries. By taking action now and making this change as part of a broader reform of our corporate tax system, we are giving certainty to investors about corporate tax in Ireland for the next decade. These measures will enhance Ireland's corporate tax regime and align it with best practice international. We will ensure that Ireland continues to be the home of the best and most successful companies in the world. We will attract and retain companies with real substance, offering real jobs. Full details of all the measures I am announcing today will be included in the Finance Bill. These corporation tax reforms will also support our international financial services sector. Over 33,000 highly skilled professionals are employed in international financial services in Ireland, and a new strategy for financial services in Ireland is currently being developed and will be launched next year. The strategy will identify and lay out actions to successfully develop the opportunities to grow the sector in this globally competitive market and increase the numbers employed. I now move to farming and the agri-food sector. Farming is our biggest indigenous industry, with an annual turnover of about 26 billion and 170,000 employees. It is not only important because of the number of people it employs, but also because of where it employs those people, in every townland and along every byroad in Ireland. I'm publishing today the Agri Taxation Review, which I announced in last year's budget. Arising from the recommendations in the review, I am introducing a number of tax measures to support farming. There will be no milk quotas from 2015, leading to new opportunities that we can exploit, but we need to make additional land available to young and active farmers. Therefore, to encourage the long-term leasing of land and improve productivity, I am increasing the income tax exempt threshold by 50% and introducing a new threshold for leases of 15 years and over. I am allowing relief where the leasee is a company. I am removing the current 40 years of age threshold for leasing relief. I am targeting CAT relief for agricultural property to ensure it is used by active farmers. I am broadening CGT retirement relief so that, for example, individuals can now lease out their land for up to 25 years prior to disposal and be eligible for CGT retirement relief. I am extending CGT retirement relief to land let under Conacher, which is disposed of or converted to long-term leasing before the end of 2016. I am extending stamp duty relief for non-residential land transfers between close relatives. I am removing stamp duty on agricultural leases in excess of 5 years, and I am extending CGT farm restructuring relief to the end of 2016 and broadening it to allow for restructuring through whole farm replacements. Volatile agricultural prices make it difficult for farming families to earn a steady income over a number of years. To improve the situation, I am increasing the range of income averaging from 3 to 5 years. I am also allowing income averaging on farm income to be available to farmers who derive income from another trade or profession if this is due to on-farm diversification. This measure will be reviewed after 3 years to assess how well it is working. The farmer's flat rate addition for farmers not registered for VAT is being increased from 5% to 5.2%, with effect from the 1st of January 2015. In recognition of the importance of the Irish bloodstock industry to the rural economy and the anticipated yield of 25 million per annum for betting duty, the government will be providing an additional 6 million a year for 3 years to the Fund for Horse and Greyhound Racing. The government is also allocating additional capital of 5 million to Horse Racing Ireland in 2015 to leverage investment in racecourses. Microbreweries in Ireland have been a success story in recent years. They have expanded their market share, provided employment throughout the country, and are now making inroads into markets abroad. To further assist the development of this sector and not to stand in the way of growth, I am increasing the annual excise relief production ceilings for microbreweries from 20,000 to 30,000 hectolitres. Having experienced the positive outcome of the agri-taxation review, I am now proposing a similar exercise for the marine sector. The Government has prioritised the marine as a key area for further growth under the Harnessing Our Oceans Wealth strategy, with a target of doubling the value of Ireland's blue economy by 2030. I am keen to ensure there is a supportive financial environment underpinning this target, and so I intend to review the financial and taxation supports and opportunities available to the marine sector. The exercise will not cover offshore petroleum exploration and production, as a revised taxation regime for this area has already been determined. My department will work closely with the Marine Coordination Group to examine strategic measures that could be introduced to help Ireland as an island nation to fulfil its potential in the marine area. The new Irish Film Tax Credit Scheme is due to commence in 2015, and I am pleased that it has been broadly welcomed by the film industry. The film industry is very important to modern Irish culture and to the economy, not just in terms of jobs, but also indirectly through tourism promotion. As the new scheme beds down next year, I will be monitoring how it works and how it can be improved. One of the issues that I will consider in the context of Budget 2016 is a possible increase to the 50 million cap on eligible expenditure, subject, of course, to resource constraints. Tourism delivers income and jobs in every town and city, in every corner of the country. The abolition of the air travel tax last year will result in over 1 million extra passengers through additional capacity on many existing routes, as well as the introduction of new services. The reduced 9% rate of VAT on tourism-related activities has been a great success, and there are now an extra 23,000 employed in the sector since mid-2011. The initiative is delivering, and I am retaining the 9% VAT rate for these services. In the light of reports of rising prices in this sector, it is incumbent on the industry to ensure that this relief continues to be passed through fully to the consumer. However, let me be clear, the taxpayer cannot be the only stakeholder keeping costs down in the sector. If prices begin to rise, the case for retaining the measure diminishes. The reduction in the VAT rate for tourism services to 9% was funded by the 0.6 pension levy I introduced in the Jobs Initiative in 2011 and continued in the budget last year. Without the pension levy, there would have been no VAT reduction. This is a fact. Not only would this have meant that thousands of jobs that have been created in the sector may not have been created, but thousands of existing jobs could have been put at risk. As a result of the overall improvement in the country's finances, I am now in a position to continue the VAT reduction, but I am also ending the 0.6 pension levy at the end of 2014. The additional 0.15% pension levy I introduced for 2014 and 2015 will expire at the end of 2015. Every economy needs a fully functioning property market. Despite progress in recent years, the market is not currently meeting the needs of our citizens. This is evident in private housing and social housing and in the rental market, particularly in Dublin. There is strong demand for housing but insufficient supply. The state alone cannot meet the private and social housing needs of all our citizens, nor can the state use taxpayers' money to subsidise private building and construction companies or guarantee their debts and liabilities. Under the Construction 2020 strategy, excuse me, I can't call it. Under the Construction 2020 strategy, the government is removing blockages from the system to get the market moving, to generate building activity and to increase supply. Across government, we are taking action to support the private and social housing and rental sectors by addressing issues related to the planning regulations and development systems, the supply of land and upgrading of existing housing stock, and financing of private and social housing development. The Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform will address the issue of social housing in his statement. My colleague, the Minister for Environment, Community and Local Government, has announced changes to the Planning Act and will be making further improvements to the system in due course. To increase and improve the housing stock, I am bringing forward a number of measures. The home renovation incentive has been very successful to date, with just under 9,300 homes on the HRI online system, representing nearly 190 million worth of work, involving some 3,000 contractors. The incentive is generating employment in the tax-compliant construction sector and increasing sales in building supplies, hardware and related businesses. To support legitimate operators in the rental and construction sector and help upgrade the quality of private rental stock, particularly at the lower end, I am extending the home renovation incentive to rental properties whose owners are liable to income tax. This means that this very successful scheme will now be available to landlords for work carried out from budget night until the end of 2015. This will allow work to be carried out in a cost-effective manner, and I would expect that the savings realised under this scheme will be reflected in rent levels. The Living City initiative, announced in Budget 2013 and extended last year to all 6 of our cities, targets certain areas that are most in need of regeneration. In these cities, discussion with the European Commission are at an advanced stage, and I am hopeful that the local authorities in each city, Dublin, Cork, Limerick, Waterford, Galway and Kilkenny, will be in a position to suggest final proposals for eligible areas in their cities later this year, in time for the full rollout of the initiative in early 2015. This is a very attractive initiative designed to bring families back into our city centres and to maximise the use of existing pre-1914 buildings by transforming them into modern homes. This initiative allows homeowners to offset the entire cost of renovation against their income tax over a 10-year period. I am also removing the capital gains tax relief I introduced to incentivise the purchase of property between the 7th of December 2011 and the end of 2014. It has achieved its objective of increasing property transactions and is no longer needed. I am removing, with effect from the 1st of January 2015, the 80% windfall tax applying to chargeable gains on the disposal or development of land which are attributable to planning decisions made since October 2009. The 33% rate of capital gains tax and other standard taxation arrangements will now apply to the property market as it does to other normal functioning capital asset markets. To support first-time buyers saving for their first home, I am introducing a refund for deposit interest retention tax, or DIRT, on saving used to purchase their home. This refund will apply from budget night and will run until the end of 2017 in respect of savings up to a maximum of 20% of the purchase price. As a result, first-time buyers will be able to save for their first home and retain 100% of the interest that they earn on their savings. I would expect that the banks will introduce specific savings products to support this new initiative. The Ireland Strategic Investment Fund, or ISIF, under the auspices of the NTMA, is exploring ways through its commercial mandate to support financing projects that will enhance the supply of housing. Potential options include the development of house builders' investment funds, enabling of large-scale development projects, and investment in social housing PPP projects. There will be no return to the past, where tax incentives for developers drove supply. The government is doing its part to overcome the challenges and remove the roadblocks to a fully functioning property market. It is up to the other stakeholders to follow suit. There is a view that owners of zoned and serviced land are waiting for higher prices, and that is why they are not taking steps to develop their land or sell it to others who will. I will launch a public consultation in the coming months on this issue. and if it turns out to be a valid point of view, I will examine what taxation measures might be taken to penalise landowners who do not develop land that is already zoned and serviced. To alleviate the burden of the new water charge on working families across the country, income tax relief will be available at the standard rate in respect of water charges up to a maximum of €500 per year per household. The water charges relief will be worth up to €100 per household per annum when claimed in the following year. I have said.
Without interruption, please. Thank you. Deputies, without interruption, please.
I have said on many occasions that SMEs are the lifeblood of our economy and play a crucial role in economic and employment growth. The Government has introduced a range of initiatives to support the SME sector to grow and create jobs. The Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, which is expected to be formally launched at the end of this month, will increase the availability of longer duration loans coupled with more flexible conditions and potentially at a lower cost. The permanent TSB, which will shortly recommence actively lending to the SME sector, has agreed to participate in the Credit Review Office process, and Ulster Bank is actively considering making a similar commitment. The seed capital scheme will be relaunched in the coming months. I am increasing the amount of finance that can be raised by a company under the Employment and Investment Incentive to €5 million annually, subject to a lifetime maximum of €15 million. Investment in the management and operation of nursing homes, medium-sized enterprises in non-assisted areas, and internationally traded financial services that are certified by Enterprise Ireland will now qualify under this scheme. I am increasing the required holding period for shares from 3 years to 4 years and extending the inclusion of hotels, guest houses and self-catering accommodation in the scheme by a further 3 years. These changes are subject to the approval of the European Commission. To support SMEs to grow their business abroad, I am improving the foreign earnings deduction by extending the list of countries eligible to include Mexico, Chile, and certain countries in the Middle East and Asia. I am reducing the number of days that employees are required to be abroad in a year to 40 days, and I am including travel time in order to make it easier for smaller companies to send employees on trade missions. My department and the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation will roll out an integrated export finance strategy in 2015, with financing products and platforms being developed by the SPCI and the Ireland Strategic Investment Fund in conjunction with Enterprise Ireland. A fair, efficient and competitive income tax system is essential for economic growth and for job creation. Income tax increases introduced between 2008 and 2011 mean that employees on the minimum wage are liable to the top rate of USC, and workers on average incomes